Hey everyone, it's Spencer here, and welcome back to the show. I just completed an interview with Steve Wiideman from Wiideman.com. That's Wiideman. And Steve is somebody that's been in the SEO industry for a long time. Since back in '99, he somehow got involved building websites and doing a little bit of SEO. And then his first job out of college was actually doing SEO as well and search engine marketing for Disney, believe it or not. And so Steve brings all of that knowledge here to the podcast interview, and specifically what his consulting group is doing now, how they're working with clients, doing local SEO, doing e-commerce primarily. And we dive into a very specific example with Bob's Watches and how his consulting group has helped them grow to over $40 million a year in revenue. Now, I couldn't let Steve get off the hook super easy without asking him specifically about affiliate websites. His consulting group doesn't do a lot with affiliate sites, but we dive into the question, are they providing value? What type of link building to do and keyword research and that sort of thing for all sites, not just affiliate sites. But we do have a good discussion there with ranking affiliate sites in Google. And Steve is also a professor at a local college there where he teaches SEO and digital marketing. And he's put together a bunch of training on video, essentially the same material that he teaches in his classes, and he's now giving that away for free. And if you want to check that out, it's at academyofsearch.com, and you can use coupon code SEO Steve to get access to that for free. So I recommend that you do that over at academyofsearch.com, SEO Steve. With that, I hope that you enjoyed the interview and get some good SEO tips for your own business. Hey, Steve, welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast.
What's up, Spencer? How you doing?
I'm doing really good. It is great to connect and to connect with an SEO veteran. You've been in the industry for a long time.
Make me
and I do what I can, but some of our listeners maybe aren't aware who you are, right? So why don't you give us just a quick background, who you are, what you've been involved with professionally?
Of course, yeah. So I started in digital around the late 90s, freelancing, doing some web design work for friends and family members, and really discovered a passion for it. One of my jobs, my day job at IBM Global Services, was to migrate data from what was going to printers and mail rooms to be online. And I had this epiphany. I'm like, you know what? I'll bet every business is going to have a website at some point. And we're talking late 90s still, where some sites didn't even exist yet. Google didn't even exist yet. And so, I had that epiphany. I went back to school. I got a degree in e-business management. I got to learn everything from database, networking, graphic design, and pulling it all together through, project management. And my first job out the gate, my first professional job out the gate, was as a search engine optimizer for a local, I guess more at the time, it was more of a national, but had a brick and mortar location for monitors and that sort of thing.
And what year was your first job?
Oh, geez, that was professionally, it was probably 2004, 2005.
Okay.
So before that, I was just freelancing and going to school. And so late 2005, I get a phone call saying, hey, this little company ran by a mouse wants to hire you to manage paid advertising with this Google AdWords and MSN Ad Center thing. Could you see if that's something that's a good fit for you? And I'm like, work for Disney? That'd be amazing. So I ended up actually being the SEM account manager for Disneyland.com marketing and commerce marketing, new Nemo ride, grad night, commerce, tickets, packages, reservations, and a new brand that they had created called Adventures by Disney. And that was an all flash website that couldn't even be crawled or, with no pages to index. It was just a Swift file. So, my role there was mainly paid, and I convinced my manager to give me a shot at this SEO thing. He wasn't very impressed that I ranked #1 for Orange County SEO expert. And he said, tell you what, show me that you can rank for SEO expert and we'll talk. And so 3 months later, after creating my SEO expert page and doing some promotion for it, adding video, getting some links to it, I'm on the first page. I'm like, hey, Terry, check it out. I'm on the first page of Google for SEO expert. Let me do some SEO on these websites. And,
Yeah.
and he comes back and goes, well, you're not number one. So a few months later, I got the number one spot. I held it for 12 years until I realized that my peer group and the community thought that it was bragging, and I got blacklisted from a lot of speaking opportunities. The moment I dropped that, some 3 years ago now, now I get the most amazing adventures with some of these peers that before thought I was just this guy that bragged about being number one for SEO expert, and now I get to go camping with these just amazing friends, and it was so worth it.
So
So yeah, I
that's
was.
interesting. So you think people didn't like you because you ranked number one for SEO expert?
Oh, they didn't. In fact, I saw lots of hate and blog posts and things back in the day that it's like, you don't even know me. A few times I actually found the contact information of the people who wrote things about me, and I'm like, hey, let's talk for a few minutes so you get to know who I am, And then afterwards they post, this guy actually had the audacity to call me, but turns out he is actually a pretty cool guy, And
I
so
would
it's
think that would be a good thing if you're ranking for SEO expert. Well,
you would, we
I would
did the
just
math
ignore
on
the
it.
haters. They didn't know what they were talking about
I
anyways.
know. Well, those haters now are my best friends, and they're so supportive of me. And when I get stuck on a really difficult technical or contextual SEO issue, they're right there for me. So we have some pretty exciting, amazing, brands we get to work with now. A few restaurant chains, and I didn't have that peer group around me of folks that were just as experienced or veteran as you called it earlier. I don't know that I'd be as successful. So I think it was worth it to move on from that. We're gonna have a whole list of new keywords we're gonna try to tackle, but I don't think SEO expert's gonna be one of them.
Okay. Well, so how did you actually end up making your first dollar online? So you're ranking for SEO expert. Was that kind of the first way you were getting clients, or just curious? Yeah. How did you make your
I
first dollar
started.
online?
I think I started some of our own websites around 99. In 1999, I started to create some web directories. I had some web directories for DJs and limousine drivers, and at first it was just to help my friends and freelance clients that had those businesses, and then it evolved to something where I had people subscribing to my online directories. They pay an annual fee or monthly fee, and that was probably where I made the first dollar
Okay.
was really just kind of creating my online directories.
All right. That's very cool.
Yeah,
So what are all the businesses that you're involved with now to kind of catch people up? You've kind of given some of the history now, but what are
sure.
you involved with now? Is it just the one business, Wiideman.com, or is there a portfolio?
Sure. I think all of us as we get started, we get to a place after a couple of years where we own 500 domain names and we want to do something with all of them, and we've got all these great ideas of what we want to do. That list has gone down, to probably less than 70 domains that I own now, of which I probably use 10. Some of which are projects that I worked on with students at some of the colleges I was doing guest speaking for and some mentoring for. Um, but the only two sort of companies or anything that I'm doing at the moment, one is just running our small group here at Wiideman Consulting. We've got 9 employees now, and we support everything from your local HVAC company to one of the largest restaurant casual dining chains in the country. And the other sort of role I'm taking right now is I'm an adjunct professor at Cal State Fullerton, UC San Diego. I'm now teaching 6 classes at Fullerton Community College. So when everyone else gets off the clock and they go home and eat dinner and and watch the very entertaining news right now, um,
Yes.
being sarcastic. I'm not. I'm putting courses together and helping students and helping the next generation of SEOs so that in 5-10 years from now, the hopefully there'll be more transparency, more ethics, and more strategy, and less tactic, less black hat and things that manipulate search results. Instead, we're building good foundations on how we handle digital marketing. So collectively, I think I have just over about 160 students. So it's because it's an online course for a digital certificate program. Some of them are only 1 unit long. It's not that challenging, but there are days where I'm like, I'm not going to get home tonight.
Yeah.
But those are two things I'm doing. I'm running Wiideman at the moment, and with Wiideman, we've got our training programs and our digital programs, and then I have the teaching side. And the teaching side actually helps build the Wiideman side as we reinvent our website over the next month or two. It's going to be very educational, and it's going to leverage a lot of the content that I've created for these students.
Yeah. I think it's very cool that you're teaching in college, and the fact that there actually is a degree or courses for SEO and,
Right.
search engine marketing that didn't exist when I was going to college. I was actually surprised to hear that there was an e-business um, degree when you graduated. I didn't know that existed back in the
Yeah, when
early
I got that
2000s.
postcard, I'm like, really? Wow, I'm not going to say no to that. And then I saw Full Sail had an actual master's degree program. Like, should I go back to school and get a master's degree in e-business? And I just never did. But
So,
that
so did
wasn't
you graduate in, like, what was it, 2003,
that
2004?
was 2004. Yeah, 2004.
Okay. All right. So I hate to admit it, but I might be older than you. I graduated in 2002, and they didn't have any online business courses that I was aware of, at least.
Yeah,
Um,
this was through Westwood College of Technology.
that's awesome.
So yeah, it was a tech school, but I also had a bit of a break between high school and college. I had 3 years where I served in the U.S. Army in Fort Hood,
Okay.
and then came back and did the work grind for a few years before I went back to school. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Very cool. So we did a brief call before hitting record here, and we kind of talked a little bit about what I'm involved with. I mentioned that a lot of my listeners are building affiliate sites. I build a lot of affiliate sites, and sort of in that discussion, you mentioned sort of that you don't do your group doesn't do a lot of consulting. I essentially asked, do you have any clients that are doing sort of affiliate marketing? You said no, not really. And you sort of mentioned that oftentimes, affiliate sites are building a lot of doorway pages, and it's just Google doesn't really like that very much. I'm paraphrasing here.
Sure. Well, yeah,
Um,
a lot of our effort is around lower funnel content. How do we drive customers to our clients? The brick and mortars and the small stores and restaurants and some online, e-commerce websites that we support where there's an actual sale or a product, so we can actually calculate ROI. And one of the things that we really enjoy is geeking out on analytics and being able to say, hey, you invested X thousands of dollars in SEO this month, and generated X dollars of revenue.
mhm,
And it's really easy to do that when you have an e-commerce website to
sure.
work with, or a hybrid if you're a brick and mortar and you can place an online order, especially now during the pandemic.
But
But
can't you do that with an affiliate site?
to some degree, yeah. I mean, you could do it where you're calculating and importing data back if you're doing some online ads to promote your page from an organic perspective, I suppose. Depending on how you're doing it, if you're doing it through a third party network, tying in which keywords generated the traffic and that sort of thing can be a little more tricky with affiliate when there's not a sale on the site itself, unless you're drop shipping, of course. Drop ship's different because they're still ordering on your website.
I see.
But,
When you want to get that granular data, right? You want to see
right,
that you ranked
yeah,
number
really,
one for this particular keyword. You want to see how
yeah.
much this particular product sold from that page. Because certainly we're doing a lot as affiliate site owners. We're doing a ton of analytics, because
Yeah.
that is the primary driver of traffic for affiliate sites is SEO,
Right.
right? At least
And
for
a
the
lot of
most
it,
part.
so if you were to perform a query right now for a product with an intent to purchase, most of the results are going to be your Amazons and your online stores. Um, if you were to do a longer tail query, how, where, compare versus
Hmm.
ideas, strategies, tips,
Hmm.
um, lists, right? Those
Hmm.
are the obvious opportunity for affiliate sites to create really rich long form content, and
Right.
make recommendations within that content to drive affiliate. We do have two affiliate clients that are in the medical industry, and they're selling like essential oils and those sort of things, and they're doing really well because they create amazing content. They've got these great videos and like, hi, I'm Dr. So and so, and this is my wife, Dr. So and so, and today we're going to be talking about X, the unboxing, the YouTube videos that that people are looking to decide whether they want to buy a product, the product review keywords that you're going after. I think there's a huge opportunity there for affiliate marketing.
Okay.
But our forte has always been focused around, direct sales, and we really don't have a lot of affiliate clients. But that's not to say I don't believe in it. I think affiliate's amazing, and I think any entrepreneur who's not doing something to drive affiliate revenue. I mean, our whole new website that we're launching has a section for partners and folks that we recommend, where the goal is to, of course, have an affiliate relationship there. So you'd be silly not to diversify your online income streams by not doing a little bit of affiliate marketing, right?
Right. Yeah, no, and that's good to hear, just to clarify for listeners, because most of them, that's what they're doing, sort of those opportunities that you laid out, said, hey, there's great opportunities for the comparison, the reviews, the lists, all that. That's exactly what I teach, and have been, teaching for 10 years, right? Is building these sort of niche affiliate sites. You write really in-depth content. You rank number one for Google for best XYZ product, or X versus
Fair.
Y product, or
Yep.
whatever. And a lot of people built, that's their livelihood. People do this full time and they're making really good money doing it.
Half the equipment in my room was because of recommendations that I found likely on
Yeah.
sites and ended up on B&H or somewhere else.
So just to clarify, you think Google is happy and they're okay ranking this type of content? Affiliates that are building this in-depth type of content that we just mentioned shouldn't have to worry about anything.
No, not at all. I think where they would have to worry is if they were trying to compete against a very behavioral targeted query like buy, purchase, order right out the gate. If you're doing, buy
Right.
iPad case, and I definitely encourage anyone who's listening and are watching to do some of these queries where they're using words like buy, purchase,
Yep.
order, reserve, book. Those types of call to actions, really are conducive to somebody who's in the I need to buy now. They're not really interested right away to read an article. Their intent is, I know what I want, I'm going to buy it.
Yep.
But if they're in sort of mid funnel or upper funnel, it's the greatest catalyst I can imagine toward driving income through affiliate. In fact, one of my first ebooks that I wrote in the 2000s was called SEO in a Day, and I went after, is it Monavi, the little how do you call it, a acai drink, right?
Oh,
And
uh-huh.
I saw that they weren't doing any sort of digital marketing for themselves, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna pick one of these MLMs and just create a affiliate site and show that you can do optimization and get traffic and revenue in a day or less. And so we went through with this whole WordPress walkthrough. I recorded the whole video on how to do it and created content. It was up to 10 o'clock at night creating content. The first thing that I optimized for was the thing that I had the most trouble with. I couldn't sign up to become an affiliate without talking to an affiliate. Well, I'm a tech introverted, guy. At the time, I didn't want to talk to anybody. So I did this search for Monavi distributor ID. And I just wanted, it said, enter your distributor ID to sign up. I'm like, crap, I don't have one. I don't want to talk to anybody. Five pages into Google, I find a distributor ID in someone's thread on some other website. And so I grab that, and the very first page I create is Monavi distributor ID 56, whatever, right in the title of the page. And within a couple of weeks, I started getting calls from Monavi like, "What are you doing? You're getting more downlines and more orders than like any of our affiliates. Who are you working with? This person isn't even responding to our emails." And I'm like, I don't even know who the distributor ID was I grabbed. I just I knew
I
what
found it.
I was trying to
Grabbed
find,
it.
and I couldn't find it, and I optimized for it. And so 4 months later, I'm getting checks from people who are buying this product. And so it's called SEO in a Day, and it's totally outdated now because it was pre Google penalties, like their Penguin link penalty and their Panda content penalties. So a lot of the suggestions in there and the methods that I used to get links to the site quickly, are obsolete. But yeah, I love and passionate about it. Affiliate, as I'm sure all of us are.
Awesome. No, very cool. So now you're focusing more on, at least through Wiideman Group Consulting, you're more focused on local companies, e-commerce companies, those that they're making purchases either on their site or they're trying to drive foot traffic into their business potentially, right?
Right. And part of it's because, it gives us more of a challenge. When we get a large corporate client who comes in and says, we're on this really wonky CMS system and we're getting beat by all these competitors. What do we do? It gives us the opportunity to really challenge ourselves to, to best the competition in really big industries and explore and pioneer new areas of search. So, for one of our restaurant chains, for example, we did a study recently of some 300 local pages. If you have a brick and mortar company and you've got multiple locations, you're going to have multiple pages for those locations. And so we got to study all of those different pages and their attributes and what's the difference between one that's ranking higher and one that's not. And in doing that, we're creating and we're building data and best practices and sort of the anatomy of a local landing page. And that's exciting because now you're a pioneer. Now you're someone who's looked on as the guys who love to research and discover things, and people will pay for the information. That's the best part as we do push a lot more of our educational stuff down the road. The sales part of that and how we really generate revenue is when they purchase some of the research that we built.
So I wanted to ask a little bit about that, just kind of how your consulting group is set up. I understand that you're not an agency, but you are a consulting group. So can you clarify that and why is that?
Sure. I didn't have a good experience in agency. When I left the corporate world, uh, 2008 or so, I did 2 years in agency and I was miserable. I didn't like how agencies treated clients in general. I didn't like the the way that they really tried to have their secret sauce of what they do and instead of being transparent. When I went off on my own and decided to be a freelance consultant, late 2009. It was built around transparency. Hey, client, here's all the things we're going to do together. I'm going to load it up into a project management system, and we're going to work together to get it done. And they were like, "Wait, you're giving me everything you do? Aren't you afraid I'm just going to do it all myself?" And I'm like, "You're looking at all this, so you really want to do it all yourself?" And they're like, "No." So, and those clients that are DIYers, they're going to figure it out one way or the other anyway. Those people who know and trust your expertise would feel better knowing that you're their wingman. So we're we're using a model that allows us to really help businesses to bring in their own SEO team, their own content writer, their own technical resource that's managing the tech side of SEO, and their own outreach and link building digital PR teams. And now all the things that they're doing have the brand voice on them, and they're saving so much money once these resources get trained up and are able to do all the same things the agencies do. They get to save so much money in what would have gone to overhead and leadership and other costs, right? So we love that model because it's something that gives us a smaller window to work with. And like, hey, we're gonna have this client forever, even though some clients choose to stay on with us for a long period of time. Our hope is our clients are independent and able to run on their own within a year. And what happens after that 1 year is hey, we want to come back every 6 months and do a Delta report on our performance. And oh, by the way, I just referred you to 6 other companies that we work with that that could really use your help. So it's been a great journey. But when you've been on phone calls 6 to 8 hours a day, sometimes telling clients how to write title and description tags and internal links, it gets to a point where you're like, I really want to do something greater. I want to do something better. The teaching part helps with that because now I feel like I'm giving back. But I've got a lot of tutorials and training, and being able to take a lot of those same repetitive calls and put them into videos and put them into how-to tutorials. That's where we really want to go. And we've worked with so many specific industries like law, chiropractors, rehab centers, cosmetic surgery, that we know exactly what the information architecture and sitemap should be. We know exactly what websites they need to be earning links in because we've done it so many times. So we're repurposing a lot of that knowledge into sort of out of the box programs so that clients, when they feel comfortable with it, they can bring it in-house and just follow those steps and not have to worry about someday someone turning off their analytics, someday someone taking down their website, someday someone doubling their fees because they feel like they're worth it. Not that I don't love agencies. I do have a lot of agencies that we support and we white label for many of them. But unfortunately in the SEO world, as I'm sure a lot of people, understand this, it's, there's a lot of businesses taking advantage of naive business owners. And our hope is we can build some transparency and improve the industry a little bit.
So is your plan with some of this training, some of these programs that you're creating to sell those? And that's going to be kind of the new or an add-on revenue stream to your consulting business?
I think it's the first step. The first step is building, a lot of enrollments and getting as many business owners and their marketing teams, taking some of these courses. I think the bigger picture is when they come back and they say, what do you recommend for this particular software? What do you suggest we do about this? Those types of questions, when they start coming in volume, segue into referrals, and they segue into affiliate relationships, into much larger, financial wins for us. But the starting point is of course building a reputation around being a good training provider. Speaking of which, I know we talked a little bit before the call, on the Wiideman site. You actually just go to Academy of Search, is a vanity domain we created, and it takes you to our courses.wiideman.com website. I'd love to give all of your listeners free access to the same course that mimics my Cal State University Fullerton course. It's on strategy, and it includes a lot of our templates. So if you like, visit Academy of Search and use promo code SEO Steve, and you can take that course for free.
Awesome. Very good. academyofsearch.com and SEO Steve is the coupon code.
Enjoy.
Very good. Cool. Yeah, we'll let people check that out. I think that's very cool, the shift that you guys are making. I'd like to kind of jump into maybe a success story, a client that you've worked with, that you helped, did some consulting for, and that they saw big results. Why don't you kind of walk us through maybe an example that you've done that can provide our listeners kind of an idea of what you guys do and some of the success you've had.
Yeah, and I think we had talked about one of my favorites prior to the call was our friends over at Bob's Watches. Paul had the safe of Rolexes, and he's like, "What do I do?" And so we decided we're going to create a website, and we're going to start with one that's already been online selling watches for a while, so that we don't have to wait for Google to start trusting our content. We built a really strong information architecture, or what we call in the SEO world a site taxonomy. We looked at all the competitors. We looked at how they were doing their content. We looked at titles, headings, descriptions, interlinking, inbound linking. We looked at all those different areas of search before we even launched the website. And then when we launched with a really solid foundation for SEO. Within the first year, that little safe of Rolexes idea turned into about $123,000 of revenue, extra revenue for a business that didn't even exist. Last year, they made over $40 million in sales.
Wow.
So to have started, 11 years ago, almost 11 years ago, at zero, and see a company evolve where a majority of the traffic comes from organic search, to see them tackle really hard categories like just the phrase Rolex watches or Rolex Submariner and Rolex Yachtmaster, to see them on the first page for those queries, knowing how competitive it is, is probably our favorite success. And I remember one time going in to get a watch for my wife, and I was like, oh, I really can't afford this kind of thing. I'm a digital marketer. I'm not rich. And so I go to Paul and I had him help me pick a watch. And I'm like, so can I make payments on this thing? And he looks at me and he's like, your money's no good here. And so I was able to get my wife a Rolex for our anniversary, and it didn't cost me a dime because of that.
Nice.
And that was, to me, that was my own personal win or success, that I had helped a business so much that they just wanted to give me a very expensive watch, and that was amazing.
Yeah. So very cool. So it sounds like you were there in the early days, at least started in the early days, helping them get online and get their site structure all set up and working properly so it could do well in Google. What were some of the maybe specific SEO strategies that you consulted with them on? Sort of once they had the site up and now they're trying to actually rank in Google for these more difficult terms, like Rolex watches and some of the other things that you mentioned.
Right. Well, let's start with technical. On the technical side, we have our own little technical audit that we run. We look at page speed, accessibility. We look at user experience. We look at privacy, right? We want to make sure we're addressing all those sort of core fundamental areas. Page speed and mobile experience being the most important. The big pivot in 2013 when we started to move away from, desktop into more responsive and really emphasizing our mobile experience. That was a big part of it. We had to sit down and really design out, mock up what that mobile experience should look like and how we can make it as quick to make a purchase as possible. I think that was a big one. The other thing we started to learn about was in the internal search, the search bar that was on the website. We started to look at how people were looking for content, and some of the queries were really interesting. Some of them were queries such as how to find my Rolex serial number, and some more question-based queries that people were asking, where their intent was really to sell their watch. And so,
Mhm.
in looking at some of that, we started to create some really rich video content. Some videos have like hundreds of thousands of views. How to find your Rolex serial number, how to find your Rolex model number, how to tell if your Rolex is fake or real. We built a lot of content based on what we knew our users were looking for, where we knew their ultimate intent was to try to sell or to purchase a watch. And that was huge. So, creating that content, driving them to the website, because it's not in an industry that Google restricts it on, we were able to do remarketing, bring them back to the website, get them to opt in, build our newsletter list, and now, convert a lot of users through email marketing. So it all sort of plays together in that whole, holistic game of looking at inbound marketing and our entire marketing automation suite to take all of those different mediums, including paid search and organic search and remarketing, and turn it into, a loyalty base that becomes our customer base, that becomes the folks that share all that great content when they get our newsletters, and forward it to friends who then opt into the newsletters. So it was a real, I think it was a real fun and successful account, it's driven strongly by SEO and a lot of that research. The other, I think the most challenging part for that business is the link side of things. As you know, links are a signal for SEO,
Yep.
and getting links to stores isn't always the easiest thing to do. So the business had to delegate someone on the team to be basically a relationship manager, and they went out and they built relationships with some of the largest watch blogs and watch forums that are out there, some at really high costs to build those relationships. And that transcended into referral traffic and great do follow links to the website. But that was probably the most challenging of anything, is getting somebody to own that role and to hit those sites that are going to provide the most link value.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you hit on links, because I was going to ask about that, what the strategy was there, because I know it can be challenging for e-commerce sites. And
Mm.
so when you say they had a relationship manager, and the building the relationships with some of the bloggers was kind of expensive or difficult, were they paying for links? Were they, or you just mean expensive in terms of time and energy?
A lot of it's time and energy and effort. We when we wanted to watch reviewed, we'd have to find and wait or purchase the watch that they wanted to review and get that watch over to them. In many cases, we'd become a sponsor on the site, just so that we built that advertising relationship with them first. And then when you do go back and you say, hey, can we get you to review one of our watches or do something where we get a little bit something more organic on your site, they're more compelled to say yes, because they don't want to lose the advertising business.
Hmm.
But you're not paying for the links; you're paying for the relationship. To make them feel a little bit guilty to say no. When you do ask to do something that results in more of an organic link. But it's a faux pas, as you know, to ask for links. So you just never do that. You build the relationship in the way, and sometimes when you're doing brand name link claiming, it'll be the message will be, hey, that's so awesome that you mentioned us. However, whenever I try to click on our company name, it doesn't go to our website for people to learn more about us. Can you make where our name is clickable, right? So there's language that you use, because everyone is learning this SEO stuff. Everybody gets part of it, and those people who are in those really competitive industries like Rolex, will call you out in a heartbeat if they get an email or a direct message, with a message that says, "Will you link to me?" And And those that are working with our competitors will send that straight to John Mueller or to somebody else, and then we get a manual review, and that's not fun. So you got to be careful on how you do that outreach. We use 4 different approaches. One is try to get someone to reference our content. We have lots of data, lots of charts, lots of lookup tables, lots of how-tos, right? We get that referencing. If we can get them to reference something, that's awesome because it helps build our authority. Second is cross-promote. We look at similar brands in different verticals. Maybe you don't sell Rolexes, but you sell diamond earrings or something, and it's still a luxury thing. You figure out a way that you can collaborate and promote each other in a way that ultimately ends up, getting some links back to the site and some referral traffic. The next one is contribution, where we'll go out and we'll actually contribute something. I mentioned lending Rolexes out to these folks that review watches. You send out a $10,000 watch to somebody. That's a risk, but you're contributing because you're giving them something that they can use that results in reciprocity and getting something back. The last one, is the red flag, is the sponsorship thing. Maybe there's watch conventions that you sponsor and you get a link from that sponsors section. You got to be really careful with that because it is still like buying a link. And even more recently with the rel equals sponsored, attribute, it's less valuable now, I think, than it ever was. But, we used to use sponsoring local community clubs and soccer teams and industry conferences. And now those links just aren't as valuable. No one ever links to those pages themselves anyway. So we try to focus on those 3 approach types, is the reference, the cross promotion, and the contribution.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are some good tips that I think listeners can take note of and perhaps apply into their own business. What are your thoughts on guest posting? It's pretty common. I think all of us, at least that have websites, probably get 2 or 3 emails a day saying, hey, I'd love to guest post on your site. That usually we don't respond to. But on the other hand, I know a lot of people that do really, really well with guest posting. And a lot of times that comes, building a relationship, but then just saying, hey, I'd love to contribute to your site. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you guys implement through your consulting?
Yeah,
group?
if you think you can provide value, then it's worth it. If you think you can provide content that's going to get linked to itself because the content's that great, and it's not just an article you order from some crap website. Our industry is a little bit challenging because there's very limited number of of veteran SEOs that can write content that somebody hasn't already read. I did a guest post recently for Bright Local. If you do a search for how to rank in Google Maps, I think it's like number 4 or 5 right now.
Okay.
And the advantage of me giving that content to them was it supports helping build brand authority, helps my personal brand when people see that it's my name, my picture next to it that wrote the content. Yeah, it drives traffic to them, but it also helps me because it mentions our name, it mentions SEO, multi-location SEO specialist, right? So there's lots of benefits to doing guest posting where there's a need. If you can provide something that's genuinely like the best content for that site, like the Bright Local does local SEO, and for me to do a post on how to rank in Google Maps, that's beneficial. But the challenge that I see is that a lot of the blog guest posting that I'm seeing going on is very generic. It's very thin, or it's regurgitated content from other websites, and it's just not very helpful. There's no graphics, images, video. There's nothing that's in rich media. Its sole purpose is to get a link, and I think Google's figured that part of it out. So I think guest posting where you're providing real value and you get a link out of it without asking is great. I love that. But guest posting for the point of trying to get links, I think that's passé. I think if you're doing it to try to get links and you're just creating some generic regurgitated stuff that they can find anywhere, I wouldn't waste your time.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion because a lot of people are putting a ton of time and effort into guest posting. Yep. And, I can hear my listeners also saying that, well, how do you create something that new that isn't being regurgitated? I mean, essentially,
use your own data. If you're an expert at it, you have your own data. When I did
there, you go. There's a good point.
It was based on information that only I knew, that only I researched. That research that I mentioned earlier about multi-location, a lot of that feeds into the content. It's something that nobody's seen or read or heard before because it was data that I grabbed myself. And that's why working with a lot of the brands is easier, because those brands have data. Like Public Storage has tons of data about how often their customers do X, what type of things their customers are looking for. Only they have that information, and they can share that, and create really unique content.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get the conundrum there. It's tough. It's like, how do you come up with something that's unique and original? Sometimes it takes some creativity. Maybe you use Design Pickle to come up with some graphics to make your page more humorous or stand out, or informational. Maybe you go to Mechanical Turk and you run a survey and you added some charts and graphs to support some of the points that you have, that are in your thing. We did that when we did a post on how important are Yelp reviews. You can find that usually number 2 or 3 as well. And you'll find lots of charts and graphs, and a lot of which came from Mechanical Turk surveys that I ran to see what people thought. So I think there's a lot of ways that you can create really true, unique value in where you're creating content. Remember, there's 3 criteria to look at before you even waste your time. One is, what's the likelihood of people actually linking to this page over time? If I contribute this blog post, is it going to get buried in their feed and just be just some generic post with a link on it? Or is this going to be something that because they have a lot of subscribers and followers, is going to get shared and linked to itself? 2, what's the likelihood I'm going to get referral traffic? I'm not going to go to some car website and say, here's an article on how to rank in Google Maps. I'm going to go to a Google Maps website and say, here's an article. And the third criteria is going to be more around brand awareness. If I get mentioned, like I was on Yahoo News a week ago, and we got tons of traffic and great brand visibility, but the page might not get links of its own, and it might not generate referral traffic because it's in a news article. But I get enough eyeballs on it on a very influential site that gets crawled very frequently that it makes it worthwhile. So look at those 3 criteria before you guest blog post: the likelihood of someone actually linking to this page, and more people over time linking to it so it doesn't get buried. The likelihood of sending referral traffic, and the likelihood of it being seen by potentially thousands of people. If it doesn't hit one or more of those criteria, I wouldn't waste your time with it.
Yeah, those are some great tips, criteria that people can follow when they're looking at doing guest posting. And so maybe just to wrap up the story with Bob's Watches.
Okay.
You gave us some great tips. I really liked, and actually maybe a follow-up is they looked at the search queries that were happening on their site and were able to find some, long tail keywords you mentioned, looking for serial numbers, that sort of thing. What about people that maybe aren't getting really much traffic to their site yet? And so they're not getting that on-site search happening. How can they find, long tail search queries, question-based keywords? What would be your recommendation there?
There's plenty of tools you can play with. The free and most obvious is just performing a search and looking at the questions that show up and the related searches at the bottom of the search results. It's a really easy way to get some information right away. You could also use Answer the Public. We finally upgraded and got a paid account, and it was worth it. It's tons of great questions: who, what, where, why. Pretty little charts. We usually just go to the data tab and download everything. And then we port that into the Google Keyword Planner to see what the real search volumes are for those search terms. SEMrush, if you're an SEMrush client, they have a keyword magic tool with a questions filter. I love that. And you go straight to the questions filter. Let's say you're promoting a kid's toy or whatever. You put in the name of that into the keyword magic tool. You click on questions, and it shows you all the questions people ask around that product, which is tons of content for you to put on your website. Some of it's probably going to be more H2s on the page. Some of them might have enough volume that they create their own page. And if you're more of an enterprise brand, you got some real budget to play with, I would say Conductor Searchlight and BrightEdge both have some really interesting tools. BrightEdge has the data cube, and then Conductor has their own search tool that allows you to filter into more upper funnel. So it's not just who, what, why, and how, but also strategies, ideas, tips, reasons why, right? Things like that go beyond just the question words.
Yeah. No, that's great. Great tools, great suggestions for people that they can check out. So I kind of cut you off in terms of just wrapping up the Bob's Watches story. I was just going to ask any final tips, or were there any final SEO strategies that you sort of implemented that you saw worked really well for them?
Yeah. I would say continuing to nurture the category and product detail pages. If you look at the site and maybe play with archive.org and look at those same URLs just to see how they've evolved. uh, paying a lot of attention to sales principles, not just keywords. We did some really interesting things when we needed to sell more watches, and we created an inline little thing that comes up, not a pop-up, but an inline thing that pushes the content down and says, "Hey, buy this watch in the next 20 minutes and save $500." Right? Some
Hmm.
really creative things that we did. Once the user's been on the page long enough for us to know that they're really interested in the product, then we started to use that urgency and scarcity thing. The other thing you'll notice if you look at some of the attributes on the page are things like 5 people are viewing this. And in an industry like Rolex watches, where you have a specific model and type and attribute, and maybe it's a certain bevel or whatever, right? Those are kind of hard to find, and it's a collector's thing. So by putting 5 people are looking at this right now, if they genuinely are, um, you know, could could really affect the psychology of the page and get them to impulsively make a decision quicker.
Yeah. Yeah. No, those are some great tips and strategies as well. Steve, it's been great having you on the podcast here. If people want to follow along with what you're doing, where's the best place that they should go?
Sure. We're all over LinkedIn right now. You go to LinkedIn and just search for me by name, or even our team at Wiideman. We're also on Instagram and Twitter, just Wiideman, Wiideman. You can share anything you want to there, ask questions there as much as you want. Take that free course, at Academy of Search. It took a lot of work, and it's a 6-week thing that I actually teach at the college. I think you'll enjoy that. You'll enjoy the templates. I appreciate all the feedback, because it is sort of Gen 1 for this thing. So, please take it, enjoy it, watch the search history videos and best practices. And if found it useful, let me know. I'd love to get your feedback.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Again, I mean, people that are listening in, that really is a huge value. I mean, you could pay for a course and go to a college and get this stuff, or you could get it for free. And so I would recommend people go get it for free. Steve's put this great resource together at Academy of Search. And so go ahead and check that out. I think that would be a great resource to go through that can hopefully give you a lot of SEO strategies that you can apply to your own business. But once again, Steve, thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.